A special song sung, just bake me some chocolate chip cookies. That's all you really have to do. I mean, but actually don't, because I've been put back on a diet. So. Yeah, that's like round 37 of the diet. But there's this evil thing called a cardiologist, and you got to go to and tells you got to lose weight. But anyway, today is our sermon series, the end of our sermon series, My Bad Church Experience. And I hope and pray that this series has not been your bad church experiences. But if it has been, I will say, please consider yourself lucky if this is all that it is that this sermon series went on too long. And we've been looking at some of our bad church experiences because they are really just human experiences that we or bad life experiences that we kind of bring in or carry in to the church. And today, as we finish My Bad Church Experience, it was actually not one experience. It was actually about 2 years of bad church experience. The church that I grew up in as an associate minister and youth minister, and I served there. And we began to look at our facilities and realize that with our current people in our congregation, the facilities was not meeting our needs to do outreach ministry. So we consulted with an architect and began some renovations and adding on to the church building. As we did that, word got out, and we were approached by a developer to buy our church and our church property for $3 million. The congregation didn't really want to move, so they decided, hey, why don't we just throw out a ridiculous number and tell them we would be interested in selling if the price was $10 million. And so the developer took it. And we began the process of discerning and voting and dreaming of what as a church we should do. And on the outset, that sounds awesome. But in reality, it was a nightmare. You see, the vote to sell and relocate passed by 7 votes. But the whole voting, the whole discussion, the whole meetings got really nasty. And I realized that people of the church can get very emotionally invested in a building. I too had mixed emotions because this was the building where my parents dedicated me as a child. This was the building where I stood and took my first communion and I was baptized. This was the building where I stood and preached my first sermon. This was the building that my father-in-law, the last time he walked and assisted, was walking Kelly down the aisle. So it was my home. It was conflicting. There was really no good outcome of this. But the decision was made, and the architects began to meet with everyone of our church in small groups to do something. If you've ever worked with an architect, they do something called programming. And they basically wanted to meet in small groups with every person of our faith community and ask them one simple question. Before they drew a line, before they made a design, before they had any concept of what the building should be in their head, they wanted to know the answer to one simple question. What do you want to do in the new building? Simple, right? What do you want to do in the new building? And I painfully sat through every small group meeting with each painfully the same scenario. The question was asked, what do you want to do in this building? And the answer was always the same. We need tan carpet, we need yellow walls, and we need these types of drapes. Again, the architect would ask, no, let me explain myself. What do you want to do? Not what you want the church to look like. What do you want this church to do in this new space that you are building? Tan carpet, yellow walls, and this type of drapes. And it was revealing to me that the people of the church were heavily emotionally attached to a church building. And during this building process, God called me before the building was complete. But over the building process, from the time it began to the time they opened their doors in their new building, they had lost over 3/4 of their membership. Why? Because church became about tan carpet and yellow walls and a certain type of grapes. And somehow, somewhere, we as a universal church made the assumption that a church is a location or a building. But we actually come about it honestly. You see, Jesus stood with just 12 guys one day on a dusty, dirty road outside Jerusalem. And as he looked at the city and he knew what was going, he asked those guys around him just 2 simple questions. He asked them, "Who do people say that I am?" And if you recall, the answer was, you know what, look, they think you're Elijah, they think you're a prophet, they think you're John, some say John the Baptizer and a great prophet. Jesus then says, well, let me ask you another question. Not who everyone else says I am. Who do you, my followers, my closest inner people, who do you say that I am when people ask you? Peter replies, you're the Messiah. You're the one, the Messiah of the Old Testament. You are the Son of God. Jesus says, Peter, on your answer, I'm going to build my church. I'm going to build my church that nothing can destroy it. It even says the gates of hell cannot destroy this. He says, and when we look at the original text, when we look at what Jesus actually said, Jesus didn't use the word church. You see, the word church is a German word, taken from an older German word, taken from a Danish word, which was derived from a Saxon word, that was taken from an entirely different Greek word that actually means the house of God or the place of God. And Jesus used the word eschlesia. The Greek word eschlesia is exactly what he said. And that simply means a gathering or assembly of people. You see, Jesus predicted he would build a gathering of people that nothing could destroy it, not a building, not a house, or not an address. Jesus says, I'm going to build a group of people that nothing can stop. And I'm sure those 12 guys that day in the hot sun on the nasty, dirty road that day, I'm sure they kind of shook their hands and said, yeah, right, man. Yeah, okay. You're going to do that. Okay. You're right. Go ahead. But here's the reality. Is that if you are a follower of Jesus, you are a vital part of that prophecy that he made over 2,000 years ago. And if you are curious why we use the word church instead of the word gathering, I kind of outlined it in my Courier article, but if not to save time, just kind of Google William Tyndale. He was the first scholar who translated the Bible from Greek into English, and basically he used the word gathering. And the Roman Catholic Church told him to change it. So you're going to use the word church, you're not going to use the word gathering, because it undermined their authority and their power over the people. And William Tyndale, he wouldn't change it. And so they killed him and strangled him and burned his body. So because of William Tyndale's death, the powerful Roman Church used the word church. But it was used as a location. It was used as a place. And Jesus, however, never predicted a place. He predicted a people. But for most of us, the word church is nothing more than a place. I mean, we say, I go to church. I went to church. And that doesn't make sense if you listen to what Jesus actually said. It wasn't intended to be a place you could attend to or go to. It was a growing group of people of God. And if the totality of your church experience is what happens here, at this location, if the totality of your walk with Jesus is just what happens here for an hour and 15 minutes, then you're only experiencing about 5% of what Jesus meant. You see, Jesus intended this to be a growing, nurturing, compassionate, gathering, relational group of people. And if you look through the entire New Testament, the primary function of this gathering, compassionate, relational group of people, The primary function was to one another. It's not a typo. The basic function, if you look at, besides the four Gospels, if you look at all the letters, the epistles, if you look at all of Paul's writing, Peter's writing, and James' writing, they're speaking of mainly an activity of the church. They never mention this part. They don't. I mean, they say stuff like, when you gather and meet, they assume that they take communion. But they never say how. They never say what kind of juice to buy. They never say, do you pass it? Do you dip it? They never say none of that. They just say, when you have communion, when you gather, they say stuff like, hey, don't leave anyone out. Don't start before everyone gets there, because people have already left when other people have to get there. We assume, and they assume too, that when people gather, they would sing, because that was customary in their day. But they never said in the Bible what types of songs to sing. They never said who gets to pick those songs to sing. Or they never even said what type of instruments that you need to use when you sing. We assume when they talk about the early church or gathering, we assume there was teaching and preaching because they mention it. But they don't say on what topic or how long. I mean, Paul preached a sermon one day so long that a guy fell asleep, he fell out of the window and died. Are y'all awake up there? Move back from the balcony. You see? I mean, and so far, I know people have dozed off in here, but I don't think anyone has died yet for falling asleep. We want to keep it right under that time mark. But see, all we know is when they gathered, they had communion, the Lord's Supper. We know that they sang songs of praise to God. And we know that they had some type of messages. But that's it. That's 5%. That's it. So what did they do? I mean, what did they do? And if you read all the letters in the New Testament, 95% of it was relational. They one another. See, they forgave one another. They accepted one another. They cared for one another. They encouraged one another. They endured one another. They put aside pettiness for one another. They restored one another. They carried each other's burdens for one another. And then the big one that encompasses it all, that says more than anything else, the main thing is found in our scripture today. If you will turn to me to the 13th chapter of the Gospel of John, beginning with the 34th verse. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give you, love one another. As I loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Jesus says the one thing that makes you a church, that makes you Estelia, that makes you a group of people in which I will build that nothing can destroy. The one thing you should do and be is love. Love one another. You see, what we do here each week is the easy part. It is the easy part. It's the organized part. But according to Jesus, what we do here for an hour and 15 minutes on Sunday morning is only 5% of what the church should be. Jesus said, everyone will know you are my followers. By the way, Jesus said this is how you become a growing gathering people, is how you love one another. No one will know you're my follower because you sit in a pew. No one will know you're a follower of Jesus because you sing a few songs and you drop a bucket and an offering plate. I mean, look at it. I mean, think about it for a second. Look at temples Even back then and to this day, temples and church buildings come and go. And during Jesus' time, there were hundreds of pagan temples on every single corner. And Jesus said, people will know your mind another way. They will know your mind another way. Not by going in there and offering up a sacrifice or dropping something as an offering. He said, they will know you not by attending a temple. They will know your mind because and how you love. You see, what makes us different, and Jesus knew the ravenous pull of all religions was departmentalization. Jesus knew that. And what that simply means is, I can be fine with God, and it doesn't matter how I treat other people. All other religions are like that. So you see, I can come to worship my God. I can drop a pigeon or a sheep or a lamb or $1 in the offering plate, and I can hate him or her. It works in all other religions except Jesus. You could say all other religions that works, but not in my gathering either. See, this is how rich relational Christianity was designed to be. It's how following Jesus is supposed to be. I mean, what we do here is only a very small part of what being a church is all about and is called to do. I mean, the energy, the focus, the finances need to be focused on wanting one another. And look, you can be angry at me. You can disagree with me. You can think I'm insane and crazy and need more food in my life. I don't know. But I'm just relaying to you what Jesus said. Simply put, through all the bad church experiences, through all the good church experience, if you want to be part of something that nothing can destroy, you've got to love one another. If you desire to be a growing part of a group of people and an active part of Jesus' prophecy, then you have to love one another. Jesus created, desired, and died for a group of people. Not a place with tan carpet, yellow walls, those certain type of dreams. Will you pray for me?